Hello, welcome back to Dapper Reads. Today we're going to actually read from r/prorevenge. I hope that you enjoy. Scammers stole 15k from me, so I shut them down. I was scammed when I was trying to sell my timeshare. I know I should have been more careful, and after paying them 15k, I was trying to get back at least some of my money. The person I was talking to said I could receive a refund but never received anything. I contacted the Attorney General in the state that they said they were in, and was told that they could not reach them. So next time I talked to them, I conferenced in the person from Consumer Complaints, and she was able to talk with them. But he just have her double talk on why there was so many complaints, so I started a plan, the revenge. I work in high tech, and went to their website and copied every screen they had, and made my own with the word scammer in big red letters across the page. After I had all the page created, I created my own website with the same name as theirs, except mine had the word scam at the end. I used a popular web hosting site to create my Send website and published it to my domain name. It cost me $9 for 1 year. I even had other people who scammed by them contact me on my website. I tested my website using other computers to Google their name, and my website name showed up right under theirs. So anyone who Googles their name would see the scammer site and mine's next to each other. It took about 3 months and their website was taken down. Another 3 months and their phone number was disconnected. So basically I put them out of business because they would not refund any money from me. I would have been happy with 5k refunded and considered 10k a lesson learned. Still do not know what happened to them, but about 1 year later I got a call from another company somewhere else, but it had the same exact setup, and I just ignored them. Lesson learned. Wow, P, that was an interesting pro-revenge, and they more than likely learned the lesson. Yes, unfortunately you couldn't actually get your refund back, but at the very least, that's one less company to actually scam someone out of their money. So now on to the next story. My employer stole my stuff, so I made him pay for it. I hope this won't backfire, but I believe I did not break any laws, so here goes. Sorry for the long post. Some background first. Since I was a kid, I was fascinated in computers and electronics. During school, I had no social life. I just stayed at home, was learning stuff. I was going to a generic high school that should prepare you for university without any specialization, but there was a few people with the same interests as me, and our IT teacher was very supportive of us. When I finished high school, I already had a job as a programmer and a few years of experience in the field. I also was experienced with electronics and even worked on a few contracts for factories in town, involving creating machines for them, or the engineers came up with the idea of how the machine would work. My job was to put their motors, sensors wired up, and write programs for the PLC to control it. I moved to the big city and started university, so I lost my program job in the city. I was going looking for a part-time job while living off my parents' support. Things changed when my friend got an escape game voucher for 5 people for his birthday and took me with him. The escape game was cool, had magic stuff, like you place an object on a shelf and all the pictures in the room fall act, while we were there to solve puzzles. I was mostly interested in these magic things, making theories about how they made them and thinking how I would do it. When the game was over, I saw for a moment their technical room, and at this point I was like, I want to work here. I sent them my CV, and I was overqualified for the job. I was accepted after the first interview. I was young, naive, and stupid, so they just used me. My hourly rate was about after-tax equivalent of $8.50. To put in comparison, a cashier at a big store here makes roughly $6.50 plus benefits. First few months were awesome. I was paid for doing my hobby, and the owner loved me. As this previous tech guy referred to as Tech Moron that from now on, was compared to me just dumb. I'm not bragging, I swear. He did not come up with almost any original design. He just found something on the internet and was skilled enough to read schematics and somewhat copy it. But he had big gaps in his knowledge once he told me that I can't build a battery operated circuit that will power while the battery's charging, as this would cause the battery to explode. When I told them about charging regulators and how it was not an issue with phones or laptop, he just told me I was hired to help him and F off. Over time, Tech Moran started to realize I'm just smarter than them and his ego could not handle it. So he decided his only from now on, is to make my life a hell. For example, the owner tasked me with replicating a device that was already in one game, as he wanted to put it into another one. I spent weeks just messaging Tech Moran, asking him for the schematics and source code. Calling him, he just never replied. Then I decided to F him. I came up with an improved design and built it. When I was showing it at the next meeting to the owner, he was very happy with it. Tech Moran just yelled at me for not using his design and wasting time and reinventing the wheel. After some time, the owner realized what was going on and hired another tech guy, Tech Senior from now on, but he cannot fire Techmoran, as he had all the important source codes designed out on his laptop. And because of bad contract, it was not properly escape game property. Little did he know that in the future he would not hand over most of the designs and codes, and we end up rewriting them from scratch. The company was also franchising. We just took a game we already had running, made an exact copy, and installed in another location. Then we provided support, while they were paying us license fees, usually a small percentage of their profits. The owner was a typical manager who thought 9 women can deliver a baby in a month, and it showed as the company grew. Eventually, Tech Senior was made my boss. He's had much more experience in electronics, but was more oriented on programming and on-site support for game masters if something broke. We didn't give a F about Techmoran, as at this point he just showed up once a month, did almost no work, criticized all we did, and had working, and then went home. Things were going really well, so we hired a few electronics students to help us, the building department, which was making props like special wooden tables that we could hide our magic into, also grew. Things were looking really good until one meeting about the new franchise client. The owner told us what he needs. We tech guys talked to the prop guys, went over all requirements, and told them we need 10 weeks for it. Well, 8, but we always accounted for happening sideways, and this date will be on the contract. Usual stuff in a healthy company. Next week, next meeting, he told us that the client does not want to wait, and he put 5 weeks in the contract. His reasoning was, we are doing all the same stuff as before, and now we had more people, so it'll go faster. We worked hard, like really hard. There was weeks when we just went home for 8 hours to take showers and sleep for a bit, then went back to the workshop to work on stuff. It was hard, but we managed to finish in time. I got some sweet money on overtime, but this was a mistake. Now we showed him that what he wants is possible, so the next contract went over the exact same deadline. More overtime. I remember having almost no social life, just working the whole week, sometimes sleeping at the workshop and being as. Then every Friday I just went to the pub with a few friends and totally wasted myself to relieve the stress, and slept through the whole weekend. Then comes Monday, and we start over. Eventually I went from love this job to I don't give F, and I wasn't the only one. Our performance dropped and we started missing deadlines. Did the owner account for this in the contract? No. Repetition makes perfection. This time we can do it faster was his reasoning, and he just kept signing more and more contracts dumping on us. I remember the one meeting when he asked us about the status of Project D, as the deadline was next week. Well, we did not even start working on this, as we had our hands full with Project C, which was started later because we did not finish Project A and B in time. This is how far it went. Deposits from the new contracts were used to pay fines for the old contracts. As this meeting I realized I just had enough. Of course, our jobs was not only franchising, we also had our own games that was needed to be maintained, and were doing that all the time alongside the franchising hell. What was the biggest issue with all games was the control software. It was built of simple purpose scripts driving all the Raspberry Pis and Arduinos in the games, but had one UI presented to the game master so he could control all the props in the game, overriding them, etc. At least in theory. But oh boy, it was buggy like hell. Sometimes not working at all. Sometimes you wanted to shine light on objects to give the player a hint, but instead it opened the door to the next level. It was no universal simple request required massive changes. Lots of overrides were not implemented correctly. One day the owner finally agreed to my demands and allowed me to rewrite all of that. It took me a few months, but I created a universal engine that could handle all the game developers were asking us to do, was easy to expand, had error protection, and a recovery task. Now if one prop stopped responding, you just open the debug page and click restart. This was a game changer, as previously the game master had to switch off the power, and sometimes that was not possible during the game. And my biggest achievement, I created easy scripting language which was used to describe the game workflow. The game master now is out of working controls an option to interrupt predefined tasks and change the flow, but that barely happened as the game was now almost automatic and he was just there to give hints. I was not comfortable running this software on Raspberry Pi that was there for the previous control. I wanted better hardware for that. My request was always denied by the owner, but the game managers wanted the new software working ASAP to the point we were always just testing it from my laptop, so I decided to lend them a few PCs. Some time ago, a friend from Big Corporate pulled load Dell Optiplex workstations from eScrap. They were working fine, had an Intel i5, 8 gigs of RAM, decent mother onboard graphics, DisplayPort, USB 3.0, fully working computer. You could buy them refurnished for about $200. The company just had no use for them and nobody wanted to go over selling them, so they just dumped them. I had a stack of 20 of them at home just collecting dust. I took a few of them to work and the boss agreed we would sell it later. So I just emailed a list of my HW and what was used in games, 5 PCs, some Wi-Fi routers, old tables, some monitors, other stuff I had collecting mostly from e-waste, filled it, had no use for it. Of course I did not tell them I got it for free. I was expecting them to pay me for it. Fast forward. I was fed up with the franchising deadlines and got a few job offers that made me realize my real price, and I was an abused young kid in his 20s. Working for almost nothing, but I was waiting. And next month, my software was deployed in the remaining games. Tech Morin was out of the picture for a few months now. Tech Senior had some programming knowledge and was able to use my scripting language, but had very little understanding about the inside of the complex engine I wrote, which was now being developed for over a year. I had results, I was important, and I had demands. I scheduled a meeting with the owner where I wanted to present the list of all the wrong things and what I wanted to do about it. It all came to one single argument. I was not happy here, but you need me, so you'll fix these issues and give me a raise or I'm leaving. I will stand my ground. Recruiters from a big IT company I wanted to work for messaged me on LinkedIn a few days prior, and I already went on the interview, so I had an escape plan prepared. The future looked bright and I was ready to make it happen. The day of the meeting came up and I was in a good mood until there was a nasty accident in the workshop. I don't want to post any details, that will identify me in a second, but this even is important. I was being the youngest one there, not even responsible for mess, was tasked with cleaning it up. I had an argument with the workshop manager about me being a programmer and not a radioactive waste cleaning lady, but in the end, I just broke and started cleaning. Halfway through it, almost vomiting from the smell, I just snapped. None of this would happen in a decent IT company. I went to my office, packed my stuff, and just sat there just playing games, waiting for the owner. When he showed up, I told him about all the issue. He's argued that some, but when he got to the end, I just told him that today was the last straw and I'm leaving right now. I was employed as an independent contractor so they could save some money on taxes, and my contract had nothing about my time here. I just told him I would send my download link for all the files I had. As the contract stated they were owned by the company, he begged me to stay for one more month, and erred behind him in deadlines. I just said, I'll think about it, and left. On my own, I called the recruiter and told him I accept the job and I can start next month. Next, I just make a big archive of about 150 gigabytes of files, backups, etc. that I had uploaded to my server and emailed the link to the owner and Tech Senior. I then spent the next 2 weeks in bed watching Netflix and ignoring calls for the last week. I showed up to help clear up some things, hand over my projects, asked him about the computers and other stuff. I lent them, he told they would pay for it, and then left. I was lucky as hell. The next month, the Rona happened, and months later they were forced to close all games by government, making their income go to almost zero overnight. This, I believe, was the reason they never paid me for my stuff, even I repeatedly asked until I got tired of it. Time went by until a few weeks ago when I saw that Tech Senior was looking for a new job. I messaged him and we talked. He told me that they survived by doing private events for companies until they could open again months ago. All the other tech guys except for him were let go, but he managed until he got into an argument with the owner. He did not tell me much details, but the owner wanted something either impossible or expensive as F. When he presented cheap alternatives, the owner just snapped and fired him on the spot. He tried to reason with him about not firing him until he could teach his successor and find a new job in the meantime, but he was fired on the spot. A week later, I got a call from the owner. You hired a younger tech guy you fired during COVID and wanted me to come and answer their questions, mostly about the engine I wrote. I agreed, but as we were planning the meeting, I was suspecting he just wanted me to do it for free. When I brought up the hourly rate, he just told me we'll solve that later, hangs up and never calls again. The day of the meeting came, and I was waiting in my car outside the workshop, waiting if he would call where I am, but he did not. A few days later, I parked next to the warehouse where all the games were held, with a Yagi antenna in my car. Surprise, surprise, the Wi-Fi routers I lent him were still there, with passwords unchanged. I connected the Wi-Fi and poked around the network. All the PCs I lent them to run the software on them were still there, still running the Linux server I installed there. And looking at the logs, they are still used to control the games. I wrote the script that runs on boot, rolls the dice, and then deleted the whole drive. I was connected to my Wi-Fi router, making changes to my computers, formatting my drives, then I drove away. A few days ago, I got a call. Apparently, when Monday shift came in, the control system wouldn't insist the games were not responding. The browser was showing timeouts, so I decided to reset power for the whole rack, where all the PCs were multiple times hoping it would start up, because turning it off and on again always works. When they decided to stop trying, they found out that all 8 games were dead. The new old tech guys figured out that the drives probably died, but had no knowledge about my system, so they could not set it up. When I was about Tech Senior, the owner made some excuse about him quitting and not wanting to work for them anymore. I told him I was happy to help. In the end, this used to be my dream job, but now I work for a big company. I don't have time and expensive. I can come over to set it up, but my hourly rate is now $150. He taught me down to $100, which was still about twice as much as I make now. When I arrived, I checked the PCs, pulled out the email I sent him years ago, and told him that these serial numbers match these on the labels. I told him I already to find my lost stuff. Took my first PC and took it in my car. We had an argument. I told him that either taking all that stuff or he's paying me about over $2,400. He wanted to call police, but I had the proof that this equipment was mine. He eventually agreed and I got to work. All my software was still in the bit bucket, even with the few modifications Tech Senior managed to make, along with all the config stuff and scripts with the game workflow that Tech Senior was periodically modifying and packing up. So it was a pretty easy job. I got it all working and then stayed for a few more hours explaining some stuff to the tech guys. I printed the invoice and left, tired but satisfied. Yesterday, a nice sum of $3,600 landed in my bank account. From what they told me, all 8 games were dead for 3 days. Each game costs about $80 to $120, takes 1 hour to finish, and half an hour is needed for preparation. So there's 12 slots every day, averaging on $9,600 income per day. When fully booked, this is of course just income. Profit after paying all the rent, wages, electricity, consumable used in the game is much lower, but I don't know how much. Before Rona, about 80% slot was booked during the week and 100% during weekends. I'd just like to think I made him lost $23,000, not counting the angry customers, which was forced to reschedule dollars just because he was a jerk. If he'd paid me for my stuff and did not fire his only tech guy, none of this would have ever happened. Too long to read, my boss was a jerk, made us work insane overtime, and did not pay me for equipment I agreed to sell to him, and then fired everyone who knew how his business was running. I then decided to take over my equipment he stole, halting his business and causing him thousands. Wow, that was a really long one. It was actually interesting tale, though. I'm not sure. Well, technically, that is the equipment. He can do what he wants with it, and they didn't pay for it. So, yeah, technically, yes, he's in the right to do that. But, But anyway, that's the end of r/prorevenge. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Have a wonderful day.